The city hospital was alive with its usual chaos. Nurses hustled down corridors, balancing charts and medical trays, while doctors' shoes echoed against the polished linoleum. Monitors beeped in syncopated rhythms, a sound that had become background music for anyone accustomed to the hospital's daily tempo. Patients moaned softly, the scent of antiseptic mingling with flowers from visiting families. It was the kind of Thursday afternoon that felt ordinary, the kind where no one expected interruption, and every step seemed predetermined by routine. Then the doors opened. At first it seemed insignificant, a small flurry of movement outside, but as the automatic doors slid smoothly apart, silence spread like ripples through water. A golden retriever stepped into the lobby. He was neither stray nor lost. He moved with purpose, every step deliberate, tail swaying gently behind him. In his mouth he carried a small, worn bag, its edges frayed, leather cracked from age, and yet treated with care. The sight alone was arresting. Nurses paused mid-step, unsure if they should intervene. Patients lifted their heads from beds and chairs. Even the cleaning staff, who had seen every imaginable hospital scenario, stopped what they were doing to watch. The dog's eyes, intelligent and alert, scanned the room as if measuring every detail, every movement, every breath. He didn't sniff around aimlessly. He didn't bark or whine. He simply walked. And yet in his quiet confidence he commanded attention. Conversations faltered, alarms became background noise, and the usual symphony of hospital life dimmed. There was an unspoken understanding in the air. This was no ordinary dog, and whatever he carried in that bag was significant. Security approached cautiously, radios crackling with low murmurs. We have a dog in the lobby," one guard whispered. Another stepped forward, hand outstretched, but the dog didn't falter. He ignored the humans entirely, moving with a strange certainty toward the east wing. It was as if the dog had memorized the hospital's entire layout in advance, knowing exactly where he needed to go. Nurses exchanged uneasy glances. "Does he know someone?" one asked quietly, as if speaking too loudly might disrupt the moment. The patients, too, were captivated. A child in a wheelchair stared with wide, innocent eyes, mouth slightly open as if witnessing a miracle. An elderly woman clutched her husband's hand tightly, whispering, "Do you see that?" while he shook his head slowly, stunned by the unusual visitor. The hospital, usually alive with urgency and stress, felt different in that instant. Time seemed to stretch, the minutes elongating, and every heart seemed to synchronize with the soft swish of the dog's tail. At the same time, Max, though no one yet knew his name, showed a calmness that contrasted sharply with the tension around him. He passed carts and cleaning trolleys without hesitation, sidestepping a nurse who had frozen mid-step, carrying a tray of medications. The dog's presence was oddly commanding, not in the way of fear or dominance, but in the quiet authority of certainty. He belonged here, as strange as it seemed. Every step he took exuded confidence, and every observer felt drawn into his orbit. The bag in his mouth was equally fascinating. Worn, soft, but carefully maintained, it carried a mysterious weight. It wasn't bulky, but it wasn't light either. Some guessed medical supplies, others thought it might contain food or toys. Yet there was an aura of purpose to it, a sense that whatever was inside mattered deeply to someone. Staff and patients alike couldn't help but speculate. Whispers spread. Maybe it belongs to a patient. Could it be a therapy dog? Why is it carrying a bag? The questions hung in the air, unanswered. As he moved further into the hospital, Max's calm, deliberate pace continued, unhurried but unerring. He paused only occasionally, tilting his head, sniffing subtly at doors, and then moving on, almost as if confirming directions. Some staff began to recognize a pattern. He wasn't wandering aimlessly. He was heading somewhere specific. The closer he moved to the east wing, the more the hospital's usual rhythm shifted. People unconsciously stepped aside, giving him space. It was as though the hospital itself had recognized the importance of this visitor. Meanwhile, the hospital's patients and staff began to react in other ways. A young nurse, barely out of her first year, felt a shiver run down her spine as she followed the dog's progress. There was something almost sacred about the way he moved. Another patient, struggling with recovery from surgery, sat upright in bed, eyes fixed on the approaching canine, a smile forming despite the pain. It was as if, for the first time all day, hope entered the building in tangible form. The mundane routines, the blood pressure readings, the medication schedules, the paperwork, seemed suddenly insignificant in comparison. A doctor passing by paused, leaning against the wall, watching the dog's progress. He had treated hundreds of patients, seen countless medical emergencies, and yet this simple act, a dog walking with purpose, held him spellbound. There was no logical explanation for why he felt the way he did, but he couldn't look away. Something about the dog's determination suggested a story unfolding, one that demanded attention, and one that would likely leave an impact far beyond that day. By the time Max reached the hallway leading to room 312, a small crowd had begun to gather. Staff whispered excitedly to one another, eyes wide. Patients craned their necks, curious and hopeful. Even the hospital's security team had fallen into step behind him, careful not to interfere. And yet through it all, Max remained calm, focused, seemingly unaware of the attention he had drawn. His mission, whatever it was clear to him alone. Finally, he paused outside a small room at the end of the hall. The bag, still firmly held in his mouth, seemed to carry a weight far heavier than its size suggested. The dog lowered it gently to the floor and sat, waiting. Inside, Mr. Thompson, a frail elderly man with silver hair and kind eyes, looked up from his bed. Recognition flashed across his face, his lips trembling into a weak but genuine smile. The silence in the hospital deepened, thick with anticipation. Everyone who had been watching felt a sense of awe, as though they were witnessing the beginning of something extraordinary. Max's entrance had transformed an ordinary Thursday afternoon into a moment of wonder. In his calm, deliberate steps and the mysterious bag he carried, he had captured the attention and hearts of everyone present. The hospital, for a brief moment, was no longer a place of routine procedures and deadlines. It was a place where miracles, small, quiet, canine-driven miracles, could happen. And in that instant, everyone sensed that this golden retriever had arrived for a reason far greater than any of them could yet understand. Max remained sitting just outside room 312, the worn bag resting gently on the floor before him. His golden coat gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and his eyes, warm and intelligent, seemed to scan the room as though he were calculating the exact next step. For a moment, the hallway was completely still, except for the faint sound of the automatic doors in the distance and the soft hum of medical equipment nearby. Staff and patients alike had stopped, unsure whether to intervene or simply observe. There was something undeniably compelling about this dog, something almost magnetic. The first nurse to recover from her astonishment whispered, "Do we let him do this?" A security guard, hand hovering near his radio, frowned in indecision. "He's just a dog," he muttered, though even he couldn't look away. Max did not bark, did not whine, and did not hesitate. Every movement was measured, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Those observing couldn't shake the feeling that he had arrived at a moment precisely chosen, that his presence was intentional, meaningful, and urgent in a way no human could fully understand. Max stepped forward, bag still firmly held in his mouth, and began walking down the corridor toward the east wing. He avoided trolleys, sidestepped nurses carrying trays of medications, and carefully maneuvered around groups of patients and visitors. There was a rhythm to his walk, a slow, unhurried pace that commanded attention without demanding it. Children pressed against window panels in curiosity, some giggling at the unusual sight. Adults whispered softly, speculation and wonder spilling into quiet murmurs. "Why is he here?" one patient asked. "Where is he going?" Even the doctors, accustomed to emergencies and chaos, found themselves mesmerized. Dr. Patel, a surgeon on rounds, paused mid-step, leaning against the wall. He had seen countless extraordinary medical cases, moments of life and death that left him shaken, yet none of them held the quiet gravity of this dog's presence. He noticed how the staff seemed to instinctively give Max space, as though the building itself had acknowledged that this four-legged visitor was on a sacred mission. Max continued, passing room after room, occasionally tilting his head as if verifying his bearings. The worn bag in his mouth seemed almost to glow with significance, though he carried it gently without strain. The crowd of observers had grown, with staff from multiple floors now peeking out from doors, their curiosity overcoming their sense of protocol. Even the janitorial staff paused mid-cleaning, brooms in hand, marveling silently at the scene. Something about the dog's calm determination created a ripple effect, causing the usual urgency of hospital life to slow down around him. A young nurse named Leela had been at the end of the hallway, finishing a chart when Max passed. She felt an inexplicable tug at her chest. There was an intelligence in his eyes, a purpose in his gait that seemed almost human. "He knows where he's going," she whispered to a colleague. "I can feel it." Patients in nearby rooms leaned forward, craning their necks to catch sight of the determined retriever. Even a mother holding a crying infant stopped rocking her baby, captivated by the unusual spectacle. Max's journey wasn't fast, but it was mesmerizing. The way he navigated the hospital demonstrated both confidence and gentleness. He didn't disturb anyone. He didn't cause chaos. Yet everyone in his path instinctively made way, sensing at some subconscious level that interrupting him would be inappropriate. The dog's focus never wavered. The hallway, once chaotic with the sound of hospital life, had transformed into a corridor of anticipation, a stage set for an extraordinary event. Finally, the east wing approached. Room 312 was just ahead. Max slowed slightly, sniffing the air, pausing briefly outside a window before adjusting his path. A faint noise came from inside the room, a cough, a sigh, and Max's ears twitched. He seemed to recognize it instantly. His steps grew even more precise, measured, as though he had memorized the distance and turns from this point onward. Staff began whispering, almost holding their breath. Even the security guard, now standing several feet away, unconsciously straightened his posture, sensing something miraculous was about to occur. Meanwhile, inside room 312, Mr. Thompson shifted slightly in his bed. The elderly man had been resting quietly, immersed in his own thoughts and memories. His days in the hospital had been slow, monotonous, and lonely, punctuated only by occasional visits from staff and distant phone calls from his family. He often stared at the ceiling or out the window, remembering his late wife, his children, and life before the hospital walls enclosed him. But that day, something in the air felt different. He sensed it before seeing it, a presence, a warmth, a gentle energy approaching him. Then the door opened slightly and Max stepped in. Not aggressively, not excitedly, but with calm assurance. His gaze locked onto Mr. Thompson, and the elderly man's eyes widened. Recognition sparked in his tired gaze, and for the first time in days, a faint smile appeared on his lips. Max carefully placed the worn bag on the floor, lowering it without a single jostle or noise. It was as if he knew the exact moment to release it, the precise way to set it down, and the significance of the gesture was palpable. Nurses outside the room peeked in, astonished by the intimacy and quiet dignity of the moment. Some had never seen a dog act with such purposeful restraint. Patients in nearby rooms pressed closer to their windows, captivated by the bond forming in that small hospital room. Even Dr. Patel, who had been watching silently from the hallway, felt a lump in his throat. There was a gravity to the scene that transcended logic. Max wasn't just delivering a bag. He was delivering hope, connection, and something profoundly human that the hospital had forgotten amidst its routines. For a moment, the hallway outside the room seemed to freeze. Conversation stopped. Steps halted. Even the monitors, with their relentless beeping, seemed to fade into the background. The only sounds were the soft rustle of Max's fur as he shifted slightly, and the faint breathing of Mr. Thompson, who reached slowly toward the bag, his fingers trembling with anticipation and emotion. The hospital, a place usually defined by schedules and urgency, had become a sanctuary of presence, awareness, and the quiet wonder that only a loyal animal could inspire. Max remained patiently seated, tail wagging slightly, watching Mr. Thompson closely. It was clear he understood the weight of the moment. He had delivered more than a bag. He had delivered the possibility of joy, memory, and emotional healing. The observers, nurses, doctors, patients, and visitors, watched in awe, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. The golden retriever's calm demeanor, combined with the mysterious contents of the bag, created a scene that would remain etched in their memories long after the day ended. And in that moment, everyone present knew one thing. The arrival of this dog, carrying a small but significant bag, had transformed an ordinary Thursday in a bustling city hospital into an unforgettable event, a story of purpose, patience, and silent heroism. Mr. Thompson lay in his hospital bed, pale and frail, the sheets tucked neatly around him. Days in the hospital had passed in a monotony of medications, checkups, and the faint hum of monitors. He had grown accustomed to the sterile walls and the constant rhythm of hospital life, yet never had a day felt so charged with quiet anticipation. And then, through the doorway, Max had entered, a golden retriever, calm, purposeful, carrying a worn bag as if it contained the weight of the world. The first thing Mr. Thompson noticed was the dog's eyes. They were warm, intelligent, and familiar in a way that stirred something deep within him. Recognition sparked, as if a long-forgotten memory had been unearthed. His hand, shaking slightly from weakness, reached out toward Max, who sat patiently at the foot of the bed, the bag resting on the floor between them. The dog's presence was gentle but commanding, an unspoken assertion that this moment, this connection, was meant to happen. Nurses and visitors outside the room pressed closer to the doorway, careful not to intrude, yet unable to resist watching the unfolding scene. Some whispered softly to each other, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. "It's like he knows him," one nurse said, her voice trembling with awe. Others nodded, silently agreeing that the golden retriever's demeanor suggested more than training. There was an understanding, a profound empathy that transcended ordinary behavior. Max had stopped moving the instant he entered the room, settling himself in a poised, attentive position. His tail flicked occasionally, not from excitement but from a quiet, patient energy that radiated reassurance. The bag, worn but intact, seemed heavy with history. Mr. Thompson's fingers traced the leather gently before lifting it slightly, as if fearful to disturb its contents. The elderly man's eyes were wide, filled with anticipation, with recognition, and with a faint glimmer of hope that he hadn't felt in weeks. Inside the bag lay items that told a story, his story. Faded photographs, letters tied with delicate ribbon, a small, soft blanket, and a few trinkets that held memories of a lifetime. Each object was a portal into the past: family vacations, anniversaries with his late wife, holidays with children, and quiet moments that had been tucked away in drawers and albums. As Mr. Thompson pulled each item out, he let himself remember in ways he hadn't allowed since entering the hospital. Laughter and quiet tears mixed together, a soundtrack to the rediscovery of joy. Max remained at his side, ears alert, eyes fixed on the elderly man. Occasionally, he nudged the bag gently with his nose, a subtle reminder that there was more to uncover. The dog seemed to understand the weight of the moment, as if he could feel the significance of each photograph, each letter, each carefully preserved memento. For everyone watching, it was a lesson in empathy. Max wasn't just a dog delivering a bag. He was facilitating the healing of memory and spirit. Outside the room, whispers of amazement continued. Staff who had worked long hours and witnessed countless medical dramas found themselves caught off guard by the emotional gravity of the scene. Patients in nearby rooms pressed their heads to the windows, some dabbing at tears, others simply staring in silent reverence. Dr. Patel, who had observed Max's arrival and steady progression down the hall, felt a lump in his throat. He realized that medicine wasn't only about physical healing. Moments like this reminded him that emotional connection could be equally powerful. As Mr. Thompson held each photograph, he recounted stories aloud. A young nurse recorded the scene, not in medical notes, but as a personal testament to human resilience and the extraordinary role animals can play in emotional recovery. The golden retriever listened patiently, nudging occasionally, tilting his head as if he understood each anecdote. From the small details of a child's birthday party to the grand gestures of a honeymoon vacation decades ago, every memory was revisited with tenderness and gratitude. One photograph in particular captured Mr. Thompson's attention, a picture of his late wife, smiling, holding his youngest daughter. He traced her face with his finger, and tears fell freely. Max's presence seemed to ease the grief, allowing joy and sorrow to coexist without overwhelming the man. The dog remained at his side, silent but attentive, embodying a calmness that transcended words. Nurses watched, hearts full, realizing that Max was providing more than companionship. He was helping Mr. Thompson reconnect with the very essence of his life. The small blanket, worn and frayed at the edges, carried the faint scent of home. Mr. Thompson wrapped it around his shoulders and inhaled deeply. Memories of evenings spent reading by the fireplace, of children tucked in at night, and of quiet conversations with his wife returned in vivid clarity. Max nudged the bag gently again, prompting him to continue exploring its contents. Each discovery brought more stories, more laughter, more tears, and an unexpected lightness to a room that had been heavy with illness and isolation. Staff and visitors gradually realized the impact of what they were witnessing. The hospital corridor outside had emptied, replaced by hushed reverence. It was as though everyone understood that the dog's mission was larger than a single patient. Max was facilitating a ritual of remembrance, of healing, and of hope. The ordinary, clinical environment of the hospital had transformed into a sanctuary of human experience, guided by a creature that knew no words but expressed infinite understanding. Mr. Thompson, now fully engaged, pulled out letters tied with faded ribbon. He unfolded each one slowly, reading snippets aloud. Some contained messages from children now grown, recounting fond memories. Others were letters from his late wife, written in elegant, looping handwriting, expressing love, hope, and encouragement. Max watched closely, sensing the emotional weight and importance of every word. Occasionally, he rested his head on the bed's edge, providing comfort without intrusion, a steady presence in the midst of an overwhelming flood of memory. Time seemed to stretch in the room. What should have been a brief moment had become hours of shared recollection. Mr. Thompson laughed, cried, and spoke aloud to Max as though the dog could respond. He recounted stories of triumph, of mistakes, of love and loss. Each narrative was punctuated by Max's gentle nudges or shifting gaze, reminding him that he was not alone. The hospital in that corner had become a theater of emotion, where staff and patients witnessed the power of memory, connection, and the quiet heroism of a dog. By mid-afternoon, Mr. Thompson had gone through every item in the bag, yet the atmosphere in the room remained charged with emotion. Max had fulfilled his purpose, but his presence continued to radiate calm and reassurance. Nurses whispered about how remarkable it was to witness such intelligence, patience, and empathy in a single animal. The emotional resonance of the moment lingered long after the bag had been emptied, the photographs and letters now in Mr. Thompson's hands, and the blanket draped across his shoulders. Finally, as the sun filtered through the small hospital window, casting a warm glow across the room, Mr. Thompson looked at Max and whispered, "Thank you, old friend." The words were barely audible, yet they carried a lifetime of gratitude, loss, and newfound hope. Max responded with a small wag of his tail, his eyes soft but attentive, as if acknowledging that his work here was complete. The bond formed in those moments would be remembered, not only by the patient, but by everyone who had glimpsed this extraordinary encounter. Outside the room, the hallway slowly returned to normal activity. Staff returned to their duties, patients resumed their routines, but the air remained different, heavier with emotion, lighter with hope, imbued with a sense that something extraordinary had taken place. Max sat quietly, watching over his human companion, a sentinel of memory, love, and silent heroism. The hospital had been transformed, if only temporarily, by a dog's presence and the profound impact of one man's memories rediscovered. In that room, amidst the sounds of monitors and the faint chatter from the nurse's station, a story had unfolded. It was a story of connection, of purpose, and of the extraordinary ways that animals could touch human hearts. Max, golden retriever and silent hero, had delivered more than a bag. He had delivered hope, joy, and a reminder that even in the midst of illness and hospital routines, miracles, small, quiet, and profoundly human, could still occur. The bag lay open on the edge of Mr. Thompson's bed, its worn leather edges curling slightly from use. Max sat beside it, tail gently sweeping the floor, his eyes fixed on the elderly man. For days, Mr. Thompson had felt the hospital walls closing in, each hour heavy with monotony and the faint sting of isolation. Now, with the bag at his fingertips, he felt a shift, a stirring of memory and emotion he hadn't realized he'd been missing. Slowly, trembling slightly, he reached inside and lifted the first item, a faded photograph. The photograph showed a younger Mr. Thompson holding his wife, Mary, in front of their first home. Both were smiling, arms entwined, eyes sparkling with the promise of life together. He traced the contours of their faces with a shaking finger, the weight of years suddenly pressing on him. Max nudged gently, as if to encourage him to continue. The staff who had gathered outside the doorway watched silently, sensing that this was a sacred moment, one that transcended ordinary hospital routines. Next came a small bundle of letters, tied with a delicate ribbon that had begun to fray. Mr. Thompson untied them slowly, revealing carefully folded pages filled with handwriting that brought his wife's voice alive. He read aloud quietly at first, then louder, as if sharing with anyone who would listen. Letters of encouragement, notes of affection, words meant to inspire and comfort during moments of doubt. Each word brought a memory to life, stirring a warmth that had long been dormant within him. Max sat close, his head tilting slightly as he followed the unfolding ritual. He nudged the letters gently toward Mr. Thompson, reminding him to continue. The dog seemed to understand the emotional significance of every detail, a silent companion guiding the man through his memories. Staff outside whispered in awe, many holding back tears as they witnessed the profound impact of such a simple, patient presence. Among the photographs and letters was a small, worn blanket. Its edges were frayed, and the fabric held the faint scent of home and family. Mr. Thompson unfolded it carefully, draping it over his shoulders. The familiar texture and smell transported him instantly to evenings long past, family dinners, bedtime stories, quiet nights by the fireplace with Mary. Memories flooded back, vivid and detailed, carrying laughter, sorrow, and the love that had defined his life. Max pressed gently against his side, providing warmth and comfort in a way that transcended words. As Mr. Thompson explored the contents, he discovered trinkets, a tiny silver locket, a pressed flower, a small figurine from his daughter's childhood. Each held a story, a fragment of the life he had built and the people he had loved. The flood of memory was overwhelming, yet Max's calm presence allowed him to sit with it, to relive each moment without being swept away by grief. The dog's gentle vigilance was a reminder that even in moments of profound emotion, he was not alone. Outside the room, the hospital seemed to have paused. Conversations had halted in nearby corridors. Staff and patients pressed closer to doors and windows, drawn to the quiet power of the scene. Nurses whispered about the dog's incredible intelligence and empathy. "He knows," one said softly. "He understands the weight of what's inside that bag." The hallway was filled with a reverent hush, a collective recognition that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Even doctors on rounds found themselves captivated, reflecting on the importance of emotional healing alongside physical recovery. Inside the room, Mr. Thompson's tears fell freely, mixing with smiles as he recounted memories aloud. He shared stories of family trips, holidays, and intimate moments with Mary. Laughter punctuated moments of quiet reflection, creating an emotional rhythm that filled the sterile room with warmth. Max remained attentive, occasionally nudging the bag or resting his head against the bed, silently acknowledging the significance of each memory revisited. The elderly man's voice, once subdued and monotone from illness and isolation, had regained a vibrancy that reminded everyone present of the life beyond the hospital walls. One photograph in particular caught Mr. Thompson's attention. It depicted his youngest daughter at her graduation, the joy and pride radiating from both of them. He clutched the photo to his chest, eyes glistening. Memories of her laughter, her accomplishments, and the times he had missed due to work or distance came rushing back. Max nudged his hand gently, a reassuring presence that anchored him in the moment, allowing joy to mingle with regret without overwhelming him. The dog's patient companionship transformed the recollection from a painful reminder into a source of comfort and reflection. The letters, photographs, and trinkets became more than memories. They were bridges connecting Mr. Thompson to his past, to the people he loved, and to the experiences that had shaped him. Max's presence was a silent affirmation of this connection, a reminder that even small acts, like delivering a bag, could carry profound significance. The room's atmosphere, once quiet with the monotony of illness, now resonated with life, memory, and emotion. Every observer, whether in the room or outside, felt the power of this transformation. Gradually, Mr. Thompson began organizing the items, placing photographs back into a careful sequence, stacking letters in order and folding the blanket around him. Each action was deliberate, a way to reclaim ownership of his past and his memories. Max watched attentively, shifting slightly to stay near him, offering quiet reassurance that the man was safe, that his emotions were honored, and that the connection they shared was unwavering. The dog's presence created a sanctuary, turning the hospital room into a haven of emotional healing. As the afternoon light filtered through the window, casting a warm glow across the room, Mr. Thompson leaned back against his pillows. He breathed deeply, savoring the calm that Max's presence had brought. The elderly man's eyes, once dull with fatigue and sorrow, now sparkled with clarity and gratitude. He looked at Max, his companion and silent guide, and whispered, I didn't know I could feel this again." Max responded with a small wag of his tail and a gentle nuzzle, acknowledging the words without judgment, embodying the quiet power of empathy. The staff outside had begun to exchange glances, realizing they had witnessed something extraordinary. The hospital corridors had resumed activity in some areas, yet the aura of the event lingered, a reminder of the unexpected miracles that could occur even in the most clinical, structured environments. Max had not only delivered a bag, but had facilitated the rediscovery of love, memory, and hope for a man who had begun to feel forgotten by time. By the time Mr. Thompson finished examining the contents, he was smiling through tears, a profound sense of peace settling over him. Max remained by his side, a steadfast guardian of memory, emotion, and connection. The bag, now empty, had served its purpose, yet the impact of its contents resonated far beyond its leather walls. For Mr. Thompson, the items were more than objects. They were keys to his past, reminders of love endured, and catalysts for emotional renewal. Max's quiet presence throughout the experience had been transformative. He had acted with intelligence, empathy, and patience, creating a space where human emotion could flourish in a way the hospital rarely allowed. The room, once sterile and quiet, now radiated warmth, laughter, and the subtle murmur of memories brought vividly to life. It was a testament to the power of connection between humans and animals, and to the profound impact a single act of care could have on a life suspended between routine and isolation. As the sunlight dimmed slightly, casting long shadows across the floor, Mr. Thompson leaned back and looked at Max, gratitude filling his eyes. He whispered almost to himself, "Thank you for bringing me back to life." Max responded with a quiet nudge of his nose, tail wagging softly, affirming that the bond forged in that moment was complete. Outside the room, staff continued their work, patients returned to their routines, but everyone who had witnessed the encounter carried a piece of its magic with them. In that room, amidst the faint hum of machines, the smell of antiseptic, and the soft rustle of pages and fabric, A story of connection, memory, and healing had unfolded. Max had delivered more than a bag. He had delivered a portal to the past, a restoration of joy, and a reminder that even in hospitals, miracles, quiet, patient, and profoundly human, could occur. The room seemed to breathe differently now. The once sterile, lifeless space was transformed into a sanctuary of warmth, memory, and quiet reflection. Mr. Thompson held the worn blanket tightly around his shoulders, inhaling its faint, comforting scent. It was soft, familiar, infused with the faint traces of home, and it carried with it the essence of his late wife, Mary. The golden retriever, Max, remained at his side, a silent guardian of memory and emotion. Each gentle wag of his tail, each quiet nudge of the bag, seemed to guide Mr. Thompson through a landscape of recollection and love. He opened another letter, this one yellowed with age, the ink slightly smudged but still legible. The words were simple yet profound. Remember to cherish the little moments. Even when we are apart, love remains. His fingers traced the cursive writing, and for a moment his tears fell unchecked. Max leaned closer, resting his head on the edge of the bed, offering comfort without intruding, a constant presence that seemed to absorb the weight of grief and replace it with calm. Outside the room, whispers traveled quickly along the corridors. Staff paused mid-task, lingering at doorways, unable to resist the pull of the extraordinary scene. Patients pressed their faces to windows, captivated by the bond forming between man and dog. "It's like he's healing him without medicine," one nurse murmured to a colleague. Others nodded silently. Even the doctors, trained to handle emergencies and life-altering diagnoses, were struck by the simple yet profound power of empathy expressed through an animal. Max had become more than a visitor. He was a healer, a quiet catalyst for emotional restoration. Mr. Thompson began sorting through the items in the bag again, this time touching each one with reverence. He paused at a small silver locket, carefully opening it to reveal a faded photograph of his children as toddlers. A wave of nostalgia swept over him, stirring joy, regret, and pride all at once. He whispered their names softly, and Max responded with a gentle nudge, as if acknowledging that the memories were precious, sacred, and worth honoring. The dog's presence created a safe space, allowing the man to experience emotions he had long buried beneath the monotony of hospital routines. Gradually, laughter began to replace some of the tears. Mr. Thompson chuckled softly, recalling a memory of his daughter's mischievous antics during a family picnic. Max's ears perked at the sound, and he tilted his head curiously, seemingly attuned to the emotional resonance of the man's stories. Nurses outside the room exchanged glances, smiling through the quiet all they felt. They had witnessed many remarkable events in their careers, but few had been so purely moving, so undeniably human. Max was orchestrating something extraordinary, a therapy beyond words or formal training. Mr. Thompson's voice grew stronger as he continued reading the letters aloud. Some contained stories of small victories, simple joys, and quiet reassurances from his late wife. Others reminded him of life lessons: patience, kindness, resilience. Max, sitting quietly, seemed to absorb every word, every inflection, and responded with subtle gestures. A nudge, a slight shift closer, a soft paw placed on the bed, each one an affirmation that he understood the depth of what was happening. The dog's empathy was tangible, an invisible support that filled the room with warmth and reassurance. The small photograph album became a centerpiece of the emotional journey. Mr. Thompson carefully turned each page, recounting the stories behind the images. A wedding anniversary, a child's first bike ride, family holidays, and moments of everyday joy were brought vividly to life through his words. Laughter mixed with tears as memories surged forward, and Max's steady presence made it possible to experience the full spectrum of emotion without fear or overwhelm. Observers outside the room felt it too. The power of memory, facilitated by a creature who seemed to understand the essence of human feeling. Staff who had gathered began reflecting on their own lives, inspired by the scene. One nurse quietly said, "Sometimes we forget how important it is to remember why we're here, not just to treat bodies but to touch hearts. Patients waiting in nearby rooms paused, some leaning closer to windows, imagining the stories being shared. The hospital, often a place defined by urgency, schedules, and procedures, had become something different. For a few hours, it was a space of emotional connection, a testament to the ways in which care could extend beyond medicine. Time passed unnoticed. The sun moved slowly across the sky, casting long golden rays through the small hospital window. Mr. Thompson continued to relive memories, alternating between laughter and tears, each one accompanied by Max's attentive presence. He spoke aloud of joys, regrets, and moments of triumph, weaving a narrative that brought life, love, and meaning back into a space that had long felt sterile and isolating. Max's silent participation made it possible for these stories to unfold fully, offering emotional grounding and comfort without the need for words. By late afternoon, Mr. Thompson had carefully organized the photographs and letters, stacking them neatly on the bedside table with the blanket draped across his shoulders. He sat back, taking a deep breath, eyes glistening with both tears and newfound peace. Max rested his head on the edge of the bed, tail flicking occasionally, as if silently saying, "You're safe. You're remembered. You are loved." The elderly man looked at him with gratitude so profound it could almost be felt in the room's air. For everyone present, the nurses, doctors, patients, and visitors, the impact was undeniable. Max's intervention had gone beyond simple companionship. It had facilitated a profound act of emotional healing. They had witnessed the power of memory, of connection, and of empathy expressed in its purest form. The hospital corridors, once filled with routine activity and urgency, seemed quieter now, carrying a sense of reverence and reflection. Even brief moments of human emotion had been amplified, leaving lasting impressions on everyone who had seen it. As evening approached, Mr. Thompson leaned back, exhausted but transformed. He held the blanket close, tracing his fingers over the letters and photographs, savoring the comforting weight of his memories. Max remained quietly beside him, attentive and patient, a gentle presence that allowed the elderly man to process grief, joy, and love simultaneously. Every gesture of the dog seemed calculated to maintain emotional balance, to provide support in a way that transcended ordinary understanding. In that quiet room, amidst the soft hum of monitors, the faint scent of antiseptic, and the distant murmur of other patients, a miracle had unfolded. It was not a medical miracle, nor a dramatic emergency. It was subtler, more profound. Max had delivered the tools for healing not of the body, but of the heart and soul. The emotional transformation taking place in room 312 radiated outward, touching every observer, influencing the hospital in ways they couldn't yet quantify but instinctively recognized as extraordinary. By the time the sun had dipped behind the city skyline, casting a warm, fatting glow through the window, Mr. Thompson had come full circle. The elderly man looked at Max, eyes filled with gratitude, love, and awe. I didn't know I could feel this again," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Max responded with a soft nuzzle against the bed, tail wagging gently, acknowledging the unspoken gratitude and completing the bond between them. Outside the room, the hospital had resumed a semblance of normalcy, yet the reverence lingered. Staff returned to their duties, but many glanced back at room 312, smiles soft and reflective, hearts touched by the quiet heroism of a golden retriever who had brought a man back to himself. Patients resumed their activities, but the story of what they had witnessed spread quickly, shared in whispers, quiet conversations, and moments of awe. Max had reminded everyone that the smallest acts, patient, compassionate, intentional, could create the largest impacts. In that room, the worn bag lay empty, yet its contents had done their work. Max had not only delivered memories but had restored joy, facilitated connection, and reminded a man of his own resilience and capacity for emotion. The hospital, for a few precious hours, had become a place where the human heart was honored as much as the body, and where a dog had become the messenger of healing in ways that no medicine could achieve alone. By late afternoon, Word of the golden retriever's extraordinary visit had begun to spread quietly through the hospital. Staff from nearby wings paused in hallways, curiosity overcoming routine. Nurses whispered to each other in low tones. "Did you see him? The dog with the bag." Doctors walking briskly toward appointments slowed their steps, drawn by an unspoken magnetism that had followed Max through the corridors. Even hospital administrators, usually caught in schedules and meetings, glanced toward room 312, sensing that something remarkable was unfolding, something that transcended policy, procedure, and professional detachment. Max remained seated quietly beside Mr. Thompson, who was now more animated and alive than he had been since his arrival. The elderly man gently traced the edges of the photographs, letters, and small trinkets from the worn bag. Each item sparked stories, laughter, and tears, and Max's unwavering presence created a safe space for it all. He occasionally nudged a photograph, his eyes alert, as if guiding Mr. Thompson to remember yet another fragment of life that had been tucked away in memory. Outside the room, the hospital seemed to pause, as if holding its breath in reverence. A young pediatric nurse had been finishing her rounds when she caught sight of the scene. She stopped mid-step, leaning against the wall, mesmerized by the bond between man and dog. The sight was simultaneously heartwarming and humbling. Patients, drawn to the windows of their rooms, craned their necks to watch. Even a mother holding her infant leaned closer, whispering to her child, "See that? That dog, he's helping him remember, helping him feel." Staff and visitors alike were captivated by the quiet intensity of the moment, sensing that the encounter was more than simple companionship. It was a profound act of emotional restoration. Max's impact extended far beyond Mr. Thompson. Nurses returning from medication rounds found themselves lingering at doors, taking a moment to witness the scene. One orderly, wiping down equipment in a nearby hallway, stopped entirely, leaning his mop against the wall as he watched the elderly man laugh and cry in equal measure. The ordinary rhythms of the hospital, the clatter of carts, the hum of machines, the brisk footfalls of staff, faded into a quiet background symphony, the focus of the entire floor drawn toward room 312. Even Dr. Patel, who had been skeptical at first, found himself deeply moved. Years of medical training had taught him to approach illness with precision and objectivity, but here was a situation that defied logic. A dog had entered a hospital with nothing more than a small bag, and yet he had orchestrated a transformation of spirit, mind, and heart. Dr. Patel stood silently outside the room, feeling the gravity of the moment press upon him. The golden retriever was no longer just an animal in a hospital. He was a teacher, a guide, and a healer. Mr. Thompson continued to recount stories sparked by the items in the bag. A small silver locket prompted recollections of his daughter's first day of school, the nervous excitement and pride he had felt watching her step into the world. Max leaned closer, resting his head on the edge of the bed, allowing the man to relive these moments without interruption. Each memory unlocked a cascade of emotion, allowing laughter and tears to coexist. Observers could feel the energy emanating from the room, a quiet radiance of joy, sorrow, and deep human connection. The hospital, often defined by urgency and procedure, now felt different. For once, the environment was shaped not by alarms or schedules, but by empathy, compassion, and shared wonder. Staff began reflecting on their own lives, their own relationships, and the moments they often overlooked. The golden retriever's presence became a catalyst for collective introspection, inspiring a subtle but profound shift in perspective. Even the most hurried, stressed, or emotionally reserved staff members paused to absorb the lesson that Max was offering. That connection, memory, and presence mattered more than efficiency or routine. Children in nearby rooms pressed against windows, eyes wide with curiosity. For them, the scene was magical, a story unfolding before their eyes, a golden retriever demonstrating loyalty, purpose, and love. One small boy whispered to his nurse, "He's a hero, isn't he?" The nurse nodded, unable to hide her own emotion. Patients recovering from surgery smiled softly, the heaviness of pain momentarily lifted by the emotional resonance of what they were witnessing. Max's presence had created a ripple effect, touching lives far beyond the immediate room, reminding everyone that empathy and care could be shared in quiet, meaningful ways. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson had discovered a small, folded note tucked among the letters. It was from his wife, written years ago, reminding him to cherish every moment, to find joy in the mundane, and to never forget the love that surrounded him. As he read the note aloud, his voice breaking with emotion, Max nudged him gently as if to say, "Yes, this is important. Remember this." The dog's subtle guidance encouraged Mr. Thompson to embrace his memories fully, to experience them not with sorrow alone, but with gratitude and acceptance. The bag, now emptied of its contents, had served as a vessel for transformation. Max remained by the bed, attentive, patient, and unwavering, a symbol of steadfast loyalty and silent understanding. The hospital staff, observers, and patients had all been drawn into the orbit of this quiet miracle. Conversations outside the room resumed slowly, tinged with awe and reflection. Many remarked on the extraordinary intelligence of the dog, his ability to sense human emotion, and the healing power of presence. Max had reminded everyone that the most profound interventions were sometimes the simplest: love, attention, and empathy. As evening approached, the light in the room softened, casting a warm, golden hue over Mr. Thompson and Max. The elderly man leaned back in his bed, the blanket around his shoulders, eyes brimming with tears but sparkling with newfound energy. He looked at Max and whispered, "I can feel again, thanks to you." The golden retriever responded with a gentle nuzzle, tail wagging softly, as if acknowledging both gratitude and understanding. Outside the room, whispers of wonder continued, spreading throughout the hospital like a quiet contagion of awe and inspiration. By the end of the day, staff and patients alike carried a sense of reverence for what had transpired. Max had not merely delivered a bag. He had facilitated an awakening of memory, emotion, and perspective. The elderly man's laughter, the tears in his eyes, and the stories he had shared with the room were testament to the profound impact of empathy and connection. The hospital had become, if only for a brief window, a space of shared human wonder, guided by the calm, intentional presence of a golden retriever. Even in the following days, the story of Max's visit spread quietly throughout the hospital. Staff spoke of it in hushed tones, sharing the tale with new hires and colleagues, emphasizing the lessons of presence, patience, and emotional awareness. Patients who had witnessed the moment often carried its inspiration into their own rooms, finding solace and hope in the reminder that small acts of care could have tremendous, lasting impact. Max, silent and humble, had changed the hospital in ways that would be remembered far longer than the day itself. And throughout it all, Max remained devoted to Mr. Thompson. Each glance, each gentle movement, each nudge was a reminder that emotional healing was as critical as physical recovery. The golden retriever had become more than a companion. He was a guide through memory, a guardian of joy, and a silent teacher of empathy. For those who had witnessed his presence, the hospital had been transformed, its sterile walls now infused with warmth, compassion, and the understanding that even the smallest acts of care could ripple outward in extraordinary ways. Evening had settled over the hospital, the corridors bathed in the soft glow of fluorescent lights. Room 312, however, remained alive with a different light, a warmth and energy that had nothing to do with bulbs or monitors. Mr. Thompson sat upright, blanket draped over his shoulders, surrounded by the photographs, letters, and trinkets that Max had delivered. The golden retriever remained at his side, calm and watchful, eyes gleaming with intelligence and understanding. Every so often, Max nudged an item with his nose, a gentle reminder that there were still stories to be uncovered, memories to be revisited, and emotions to be expressed. Mr. Thompson's hand trembled as he reached for a small box nestled among the other items. It was unassuming, its surface scratched and worn, but inside lay a collection of keepsakes he had almost forgot: his late wife's wedding ring, a watch he had cherished, and a folded note written decades earlier. As he lifted the note, his breath caught. The handwriting was Mary's, delicate, looping, unmistakably hers. He unfolded it slowly, savoring every word. "Remember our love. Remember the joy. Even when I am gone, I am with you." Tears streamed freely down his cheeks as he read aloud, voice breaking with emotion. Max nudged the box gently, pressing his head against the bed in silent reassurance. The dog seemed to sense the depth of grief mingled with gratitude, allowing Mr. Thompson to fully embrace the wave of emotion without fear or hesitation. Staff outside the room, who had been lingering in hallways or returning from rounds, paused again. The quiet, deliberate bond between man and dog had reached a new intensity, an almost sacred crescendo of emotional resonance. Whispers spread. "Look at him. He's helping him let go and remember all at once." Mr. Thompson's voice grew steadier as he continued reading letters aloud, each one triggering memories of laughter, celebration, and small victories. One letter contained Mary's instructions for maintaining family traditions, recipes for meals, and gentle reminders of patience and kindness. Another detailed a trip they had taken together, full of mishaps, laughter, and love. Max listened patiently, shifting occasionally to remain closer, each movement a silent affirmation that he was witnessing and participating in something monumental. For the first time in weeks, Mr. Thompson laughed without restraint, a deep, resonant sound that filled the room with life. Max tilted his head, ears perked, responding instinctively to the emotion in the room. The dog's presence allowed joy and grief to coexist, giving the elderly man permission to feel fully. Outside the room, staff paused in hallways, smiles touching lips, eyes glistening. Even the most hurried nurses and doctors could not resist the pull of the scene unfolding before them. A small photograph, worn and frayed at the edges, caught Mr. Thompson's attention. It was of his youngest daughter on her first day of school, smiling nervously as she clutched her backpack. His fingers traced her face tenderly, and he whispered, "I miss so much, but I remember now." Max nudged the photograph gently, encouraging him to continue his reflection. The golden retriever's presence was a bridge, connecting past and present, grief and joy, memory and healing. The room, once sterile and heavy, now radiated vitality and connection. Gradually, Mr. Thompson began arranging the items from the bag in a deliberate order, telling the story of his life aloud as he did so. Each photograph, letter, and keepsake became a narrative thread, weaving a tapestry of memory that spanned decades. Max remained at his side, patient, attentive, and calm. The dog's quiet guidance created a rhythm, allowing Mr. Thompson to process emotions in a measured, meaningful way. Observers outside the room felt the emotional gravity extend beyond the walls, a ripple that touched everyone present. As the evening deepened, Mr. Thompson paused, hand hovering over a letter he had not yet read. Taking a deep breath, he unfolded it and began to speak aloud. It was a message Mary had written shortly before her passing. "Do not fear, Joy," she wrote. "Even in absence, love remains. Remember us, remember life, and live fully even when I am gone." His voice trembled, tears spilling freely, yet there was a noticeable change, a release, a surrender to both grief and gratitude. Max rested his head gently against Mr. Thompson's hand, reinforcing the profound connection that made this moment possible. Outside the room, the hospital had become still again. Staff paused in hallways, visitors stopped mid-step, patients pressed against windows, all sensing the emotional crescendo unfolding in room 312. Conversations had ceased. Monitors beeped in the background, yet the ordinary sounds of the hospital faded into insignificance. The room had become a theater of remembrance, of love, and of healing. The bond between man and dog was the center of it all, a living testament to empathy, loyalty, and the unspoken understanding of life's most profound truths. Mr. Thompson's hand moved to the locket he had discovered earlier. Inside was a photograph of Mary, young and vibrant, her smile radiant. He traced her face, whispering softly, I remember everything now." Max pressed a paw gently against his arm, reinforcing the emotional bridge between past and present. The man's voice, once heavy with sorrow and fatigue, now carried clarity, strength, and an unmistakable sense of renewal. For the first time in years, he felt fully connected to memory, to love, and to life itself. The room seemed to hum with quiet energy. Mr. Thompson spoke of his children, of vacations, of small acts of love, recalling details that had long been buried. Max remained attentive, leaning closer whenever the elderly man faltered, nudging letters or photographs as if to guide him gently. Observers outside the room could see the transformation, an emotional evolution from grief and isolation to engagement, laughter, and even joy. It was subtle yet powerful, a reminder that healing often comes in forms we cannot anticipate. Finally, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a warm amber glow through the window, Mr. Thompson rested back against his pillows. He looked at Max, eyes glistening, and whispered, "Thank you for reminding me how to feel again." Max responded with a soft nuzzle and a gentle wag of his tail, conveying the quiet affirmation that his purpose had been fulfilled. The bond between them was undeniable, unspoken yet profoundly understood. It was more than companionship. It was a restoration of the human spirit. For the staff and patients who had witnessed even parts of the scene, the story was already becoming legend. Whispers circulated through the hospital, a dog, a bag, and a patient whose heart had been touched and transformed. It was a tale of quiet heroism, of empathy, and of the subtle power animals can hold in human life. Max had become more than a visitor. He was a healer, a guide, and an embodiment of patience, loyalty, and love. Even as evening turned to night, the impact lingered. The hospital, with all its routines and urgency, had been touched by something extraordinary. Mr. Thompson, once isolated and withdrawn, had rediscovered memory, emotion, and connection. The golden retriever had facilitated a healing far deeper than any medical procedure, reminding everyone present that empathy, attention, and presence could transform lives in ways medicine alone could not. In room 312, Mr. Thompson's voice grew softer, carrying gratitude and wonder. Max rested beside him, head on the bed, eyes alert, unwavering in devotion. The bond between them had reached its apex. Man and dog, memories and presence, grief and joy, all woven together into a quiet miracle. Outside, staff resumed duties, patients returned to rooms, yet the ripple of what had occurred would remain for weeks, months, and perhaps years. The hospital had witnessed a small, quiet revolution. An elderly man's heart reopened, guided by the patient presence of a golden retriever and a simple bag of memories. The ordinary walls were forever changed, infused with proof that connection, care, and empathy could thrive even in sterile spaces. And Max, humble and steadfast, had ensured that no one who witnessed him would ever forget that a single act of love and understanding could alter the course of a human life in profound and lasting ways. Night had settled fully over the city, the hospital quiet, except for the occasional soft beep of monitors and distant footsteps in the corridors. Room 312, however, remained illuminated by the soft glow of a bedside lamp, casting warm shadows over photographs, letters, and the worn blanket Max had delivered. Mr. Thompson sat upright, holding the blanket close, eyes glistening with tears that were now tinged with gratitude rather than sorrow. Max rested at his feet, tail sweeping slowly across the floor, a silent guardian who had transformed more than one life that day. The elderly man's breathing was steady, his mind clearer than it had been in weeks. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, he felt fully connected to his memories, his family, and even to the hospital environment around him. Max had not merely brought a bag of keepsakes. He had delivered a portal to the past, a key to rediscovering the emotions and love that had shaped his life. Each photograph, each letter, and each trinket had been a thread in the tapestry of his history, now woven together with understanding, compassion, and a sense of closure. As he carefully rearranged the items, Mr. Thompson reflected on the journey he had just experienced. Laughter and tears, joy and sorrow, memories of triumphs and regrets, everything had surfaced, guided by the quiet, empathetic presence of the golden retriever. Max had been more than a companion. He had been a guide, a healer, and a witness to the reclamation of a life nearly lost to isolation and grief. The hospital walls, once sterile and unfeeling, now seemed imbued with warmth, as though the love and connection Max had facilitated had left a permanent mark. Staff who had observed even glimpses of the scene found themselves changed as well. Nurses, doctors, and orderlies spoke quietly among themselves, sharing stories of the dog and the elderly man. "He reminded me why I do this work," one nurse admitted, eyes glistening. "Not just to care for bodies, but to honor lives." Patients who had pressed against windows or lingered in hallways whispered to each other, their own hearts lighter, inspired by the profound empathy Max had demonstrated. The ripple effect of his presence extended far beyond room 312. Mr. Thompson reached for the small, folded note Mary had written, rereading her words for perhaps the 5th time. "Do not fear, Joy. Even in absence, love remains. Remember us, remember life, and live fully, even when I am gone." The elderly man smiled softly, pressing the note to his chest. Max nudged his hand gently with his nose, as if acknowledging the profundity of the moment. The golden retriever's calm, unwavering attention created a sacred space where grief could be acknowledged, joy could be embraced, and love could be felt in its purest form. The room felt peaceful, yet charged with quiet energy, a testament to the extraordinary connection forged in the past hours. Mr. Thompson began speaking aloud to Max, recounting memories that had resurfaced. Family vacations, first birthdays, anniversaries, simple evenings spent by the fireplace. He spoke of regrets too, acknowledging moments he wished he could relive, moments he feared he had forgotten. Max remained still, ears alert, eyes full of understanding, embodying the ultimate form of listening, presence without judgment. Outside room 312, the hospital continued its nightly routines, yet a subtle magic lingered in the air. Staff passed each other in corridors, nodding knowingly, sharing quiet smiles. Patients in their rooms whispered stories to visitors about the extraordinary dog who had walked through the doors with nothing but a bag and returned a man to himself. Conversations once mundane were now infused with reflection and gratitude, a reminder of the extraordinary power of empathy, connection, and attentiveness. Max's quiet heroism had created a lasting emotional resonance throughout the hospital. As the night deepened, Mr. Thompson felt a sense of completeness he had not known in years. The photographs, letters, and keepsakes now lay arranged carefully on the bedside table, each telling its own story but now forming a coherent whole. Max rested his head on the bed, eyes gentle, tail still. The elderly man reached down, placing a hand on the dog's soft fur, feeling the warmth and reassurance it offered. "I feel alive again," he whispered. "Thanks to you, Max. You've given me something no medicine could." Max responded with a soft wag and a gentle nuzzle, accepting the gratitude without fanfare, embodying the humility of true heroism. The following morning, the hospital staff arrived to begin their shifts, but the impact of the previous day was still palpable. Whispers and reflections filled the corridors. Nurses recounted how they had witnessed a dog facilitate an extraordinary emotional breakthrough. Doctors spoke of the importance of empathy alongside medicine. Even administrative staff acknowledged the subtle shift in atmosphere. Room 312 had become symbolic of something larger than the sum of its walls and routines. Max's presence had reminded everyone that care extended far beyond prescriptions and procedures. It encompassed heart, memory, and human connection. Mr. Thompson awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. He carefully gathered the letters and photographs, tucking them into the bag once more. Max remained by his side, ever watchful, as if understanding that the journey was not over. Together, they shared a quiet morning, a ritual of gratitude and reflection. Visitors came and went, some moved to tears, others inspired by the courage and vulnerability on display. The hospital, often defined by urgency and fatigue, had been momentarily transformed by the quiet heroism of a golden retriever who knew that healing often requires presence, patience, and empathy more than anything else. By midday, Mr. Thompson was ready for a brief walk in the hospital garden. Max trotted faithfully at his side, leash held loosely, tail wagging gently. The garden, bathed in sunlight, offered fresh air and soft sounds of rustling leaves, birdsong, and distant laughter. Each step felt lighter for Mr. Thompson, a symbolic release of weight he had carried for too long. The letters, photographs, and keepsakes remained safely in the bag, a tangible reminder of the journey he had undergone, guided by the quiet wisdom and companionship of a dog. Observers in the garden couldn't help but notice the extraordinary bond between man and animal, patients recovering on benches, staff taking a brief respite, and visitors passing through all paused to watch. Some whispered softly to themselves, others shared glances of understanding. Max had become more than a dog delivering memories. He had become a teacher of empathy, a symbol of hope, and an agent of healing for all who witnessed his presence. The transformation of one man's heart had rippled outward, touching the lives of countless others. By late afternoon, Mr. Thompson returned to his room, now filled with sunlight streaming through the windows. He sat beside the bedside table, holding the letters, photographs, and small keepsakes close. Max settled beside him, head resting on his lap, tail gently brushing the floor. The bond between them was complete, unspoken, profound, and enduring. The elderly man smiled softly, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "Thank you, old friend. You've given me back my life." Max responded with a gentle nuzzle, eyes gleaming with quiet understanding, a reminder that some forms of love and loyalty require no words at all. As the evening approached, the hospital quieted once more. Staff completed their rounds, patients prepared for rest, and the ordinary rhythms of hospital life resumed. Yet something had changed irreversibly. Room 312, the scene of memory, laughter, and tears, had become sacred, a testament to the transformative power of empathy and presence. Max, humble and steadfast, had left an imprint not only on Mr. Thompson's heart, but on the hearts of all who had witnessed him, a reminder that even in the most clinical environments, extraordinary acts of love and connection are possible. And as the hospital settled into the quiet of night, Max lay at Mr. Thompson's feet, vigilant, patient, and unwavering. In the warmth of the lamplight, with the bag of memories at the bedside, the elderly man finally felt at peace. The golden retriever had given him more than photographs or letters. He had given him joy, closure, and the knowledge that he was remembered, loved, and never truly alone. Outside, the hospital carried on, but room 312 would forever remain a sanctuary of hope, love, and the quiet heroism of a dog who understood the deepest human truths.